death threats, cyberbullying, threats of physical abuse. All of those things came to me because there was this intersection of being a child in the field and a young person in the field, being a girl/woman, and being a person of color.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Globe Anew, the podcast where we explore how young people are transforming our cities, our communities, and our planet. I'm your host, Michelle Huang, and I'm so happy you're here. Kehkashan Basu is the founder-president of the GreenHope Foundation, a United Nations human rights champion, and a recipient of the prestigious International Children's Peace Prize. Her work covers fields like environmental sustainability, social equity, youth empowerment, and international policy. But more than anything, she's an example of youth voices and their power to drive global change for a sustainable future. Ms. Basu, thank you so much for joining us. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and you've been so great in professional logistics and communication as well. To start us off, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you for asking. We have multiple projects going on with GreenHope Foundation all across the world. I literally this morning, like from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., spoke and moderated a session at a conference in Korea on the power of young people leading change. So it's been very busy. So our work is 24/7. And so, it's just keeping busy, which is great.
Oh, that's incredible. It's important work that you're doing out here.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to hear that you're doing well, so we can get into our first big question. You devote a huge part of your career to helping young people make a difference. Your journey as an activist began remarkably early. You started your activism at a very, very young age, at 8 years old, I think. So what sparked that first step, and what was the moment or realization that ignited the passion?
Well, it was actually the year prior to that, at the age of 7, when I'd seen the picture of a dead bird with its belly full of plastic. And I was so deeply disturbed by that because I could not imagine how, as human beings, we could allow such an innocent creature to suffer through so much pain. And I had grown up in a family that continually thought of other people and of the planet through every action that they took. And I thought that was the norm. And yet, seeing that picture of the dead bird made me realize that that was clearly not the case. And so I decided that I would go out there and take that first action myself because I couldn't really wait for anyone else to do it. And I had attended a lecture by environmentalist Robert Swan at the time. And his words, "the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it," really resonated with me. And I was like, this is my life's mission. And so I went out there and planted my first tree on my 8th birthday. And being born on World Environment Day, 5th June, I literally thought that, I was preordained to become this eco warrior. And with that mindset, I planted that first tree, and that marked the beginning of my journey.
That's such a good story, and it's such a full circle moment as well with your birthday and your entire early upbringing being so centered around helping others, helping the planet. Since you started so young, I'd like to ask, founding and leading an international organization while still being in school sounds very, very demanding. So what was it like for you growing up while balancing the demands of school and leading GreenHope?
That is a great question because I founded GreenHope Foundation at the age of 12. So I was in middle school. During that time, I was, as someone who is very, very passionate about my education and about my grades, I always wanted and did get, the top grades in my class. So when I was pursuing a career at the same time, I was like, these are two things that I'm passionate about equally. So I need to find a way to balance both of them because I wanted to, learn, get as much knowledge as I could and get really good grades. And at the same time, I wanted to continue the work that I was doing to help people and planet. And I realized that they were not two completely separate things. I would see interconnections with them, whether it was something that I was doing on the ground, like if I was working out there in the field with agrivoltaics or different kinds of farming options, working with smallholder farmers and seeing the plight that they went through with food insecurity. And then I would learn about it in science class, about the role of food systems in supporting sustainable change. And so I would be like, okay, well, I have the experience here, and this is what I have learned out there in the field that I can bring into the classroom. And later on, as I grew up, the lecture halls. And then I would see that, something that I learned in school so I'd be able to implement it on the on the ground. It wasn't just textbook knowledge, it was something really, really concrete. And so I realized that these two worlds did not have to be separate. What I also realized is that if there's a will, there's a way. And of course, it's really, really hard work. I think that once I actually finished my MBA and came out of the the school and university academic sphere, I realized that, oh my gosh, I had so much of time dedicated to both school and to work that I thought that, that was the normal. But yeah, I literally at times worked 24/7 because I knew that I had to take that extra effort to kind of achieve what I wanted to achieve. So that meant, spending more time, dedicated later on after school or in the evenings dedicated studying, because in the mornings I was, for instance, in another part of the world working to create positive change. So I was fortunate that, a lot of the times my teachers and professors some of them were really supportive. And so I was like, okay, I'll take that extra step to spend weekends and evenings trying to get everything sorted out with both school and my career. But yeah, it required really good time management skills. So I learned that firsthand as a child growing up. But no, it was something that I wanted to do. And because I had that passion for both, I was able to maintain that.
This is just incredible. I feel like it's so rare to see someone that has so much passion for one specific field, and then they dedicate just so much of their time and energy to making this field a lot better. And also that even with school, your schooling and your work in your career, it didn't necessarily obstruct your education. It honestly just enhanced it more and you just gained extra learning from what you did at work and at school as well.
Yes, absolutely. And when I graduated from high school and then went into university, my undergrad was in environmental studies, and that was a no-brainer because I literally had a decade of experience working in that field. And so there were times when I was like, oh, okay, these are things that I can, I have the experience. And I would honestly, I have been invited from that young age as a guest lecturer to so many universities and even schools, because it would be okay, yeah, even though I'm growing up in the field, I have the knowledge to be able to impart from grassroots actions. And once I graduated from University of Toronto, and when I chose to do my MBA because I wanted to make sure that I had the knowledge to be able to see how the private sector world could be a part of the sustainability movement, because, it's obviously not siloed. And so when I went to Cornell, I was like, okay, this is I'm going to make sure that I focus on the intersection of sustainable businesses and sustainable marketing and sustainable finance and how all of that comes into play. And so again, I was drawing on my years of experience working out in the field and bringing that to the academic halls. And so, yeah, it's just something that you have to find that common ground. And because I was passionate about both spheres of education, because obviously if I'm trying to ensure access to education for other people, I'm also very passionate about that for myself. So yeah, I think that I'm really fortunate that it did work out with a lot of hard work for sure.
That is just incredible. It's crazy to think about having a decade of experience in a field already when you graduate high school. That's so rare. Wow. Yeah, well, like many others, but very unlike you, when I graduate high school, I'm not going to have a decade of experience into the field I want to go into. But still, many young people watching or listening right now feel that urgency to act about things that they see in front of them, but they might feel overwhelmed or unsure where to begin. So what's your core advice for them to take that first step?
Yeah, I think that very often, especially in this age of, interconnected digital media and social media, we see a lot of what other people are doing. And we're like, oh my gosh, we have to do something that big in order to create change. But that's really not necessary because in my experience, every small act counts. When I started my journey with the planting of that one tree, I never imagined that, we'd be here today and with or even that I'd have GreenHope Foundation and we'd be working in so many parts of the world, creating so much of positive change. It was literally that one small step that I took because I realized as a very, curious child, trying to get as much knowledge as I could, that, okay, by planting this tree, I am helping with, mitigating land degradation. I am helping to do my bit to help mitigate or even adapt to climate change. If it was a fruit tree. So, I am doing my bit to help solve food insecurity through that one action. And so there's so many instances where, that one action has kind of created a domino effect to create global change. And that's literally like the work that I do. When I started GreenHope Foundation as well, it was because I realized that, I'd been invited to speak at a United Nations conference, the Rio Plus 20 Earth Summit in Brazil. It was the largest sustainable development conference of the time. 50,000 delegates discussing sustainability, only 5 people under the age of 18. So me being 12 being one of them. And I was like, there is a severe lack of inclusivity of young people in sustainability. And so when I returned home, I founded GreenHope Foundation, and it was through these small actions. I remember that we first conducted our first ever academy for other children and young people, like school children, teaching them about sustainability. And we did a tree planting event of local indigenous trees. That was one of our very first steps. We had done a packing, for instance, of basic products needed for people in need. That was one of the other activities that we did. And so slowly and steadily, we were able to grow our impact. When I started it wasn't about, creating global change. It was literally about identifying problems within my own sphere of influence and then taking steps to address that and drawing on any knowledge or resources that I had available to address that. And that would really be my advice for young people globally, not to be swayed by all of, that like, oh, you have to do the biggest thing possible in order to create change. No, you start small and trust me, like the small actions will, be a part of this big positive impact and will contribute. So yeah, localized solutions are so important. We've forgotten the importance of those things. So if every community, if every young person took the small actions, we would be able to see so much of positive change. And that is literally how GreenHope Foundation works. So I speak from experience. So identifying the local challenges, educating yourself, your family, your community, your peers, and going from there with those small everyday steps, they definitely count.
Oh man, that's so inspiring. I feel ready to just go out and just do things right now after hearing that. Yeah, as young people, our resources are limited. We don't have decades upon decades of knowledge, studying, education in a field. So there's only so many things that are available to us, and we just need to make the most out of all of that.
Yep, absolutely. And it's when you say that about, not having a say in big decisions. I was actually like one of the students I was speaking with again, in Korea, and I was speaking with them just day before yesterday to middle and high school students. And one of them had said that, what can we do, because we are not a part of these big global discussions and we can't really affect change there. And again, like people, any kind of policy, whether that's climate policy or energy policy, anything like that is only effective if it is implemented. And that implementation comes from the ground up. So while you can create and that kind of change at the highest levels of policy making is important, the real change, as a grassroots actor who's been involved in the United Nations processes for such a long time, like the real change always happens on the ground. And honestly, as young people, like young people of this generation, as well as young people of past generations, have always been at the forefront of that change and creating that change from within their communities, because I feel like especially our youngest members of society aren't affected by the cynicism that we kind of get as we grow older. And so their fear of failure is much less. And so going out there and taking action and creating change is it's achievable. And I think that is important to remember as well. So we definitely can create big change, just in a different kind of field. And yeah, I think it's important for us as young people to remember that.
Right, yeah, and you're living proof that young people have so much power to enact change that they want to see in the world. But then again, being a young leader often means facing skepticism. So have you personally encountered situations where people dismissed your ideas or capabilities primarily because of your age?
Yes, absolutely. Throughout my life, I think, if I started out so young, and so I would always be the youngest person in any room. And yeah, I was told continuously that, okay, you're like, why do I have to listen to this child? Like, what do you bring to the table that would be of relevance to me? And, when I first started out, like at 8, after I planted my first tree, I would go around to my community, like restaurants, salons, trying to encourage them to be more sustainable, to reduce water usage, to recycle and segregate their waste, to practice like literally every single action they took to think about other people, about the planet. And while some adults were really supportive and helpful, others would be like, okay, yeah, this, like, why do I need to listen to you? But I think that as I slowly built up the work that I was doing, my work spoke for itself. And like when you see the work and the impact that's there, even with starting GreenHope Foundation, when we would speak at the highest levels of policy making, when I'd be in a room full of adults who had a decade of experience, and I too would have a decade of experience. It's just that I was much younger than them. My work spoke for itself. So even though that first they would dismiss me because of my age, that okay, why do I have to listen to this person? When I told them that okay, through the actions that we undertook, we were able to increase the attendance of girls going to school in this particular community by 60%. We were able to reduce waterborne diseases as a result of solar water farm installation by 50% in 6 months. Like those are like concrete facts and statistics, and we were able to prove that okay, this is driven by young people. So yeah, the work spoke for itself. When I was 12, I was elected as global coordinator for children and youth at the United Nations Environment Program, and so that made me the first person and the youngest person, the only minor ever to hold that position. And so even then, like being a part of the decision making in a completely different sphere, so many people would be like, oh my gosh, like why is a 12-year-old here? But then they were able to see the work that I did, the work that backed me up, and the influence that we were, like the power that children had to create change, and how important our voices were, and that made them take me seriously. So yeah, and I kept at it. The other thing is that it's very easy to give up. And because I was so passionate about the work I was doing, I kept at it. And honestly, it wasn't just because maybe it was because of my age as well. There were a lot of older youths, surprisingly, who were really not happy that such a young person was there. So I faced like a lot of harassment from them, from like a wider sphere of people, death threats, cyberbullying, threats of physical abuse. All of those things came to me because, there was this intersection of being a child in the field and a young person in the field, being a girl/woman, and being a person of color. So all of these three things also came into play. And so I was like, yeah, my passion for my work is greater than my fear of these people or the fear of the naysayers. And there's literally always going to be people who say no to you if you're trying to create change. So people saying no because of my age and, all of these different intersectional lived experiences, that's something that I'm going to try to eradicate through my work. So yeah, that is how I was able to persist. And to tell my members the same thing, because they're also growing up in the field. And yeah, it's like having that drive and passion is definitely important in this sphere. But yeah, the work speaks for itself.
It frustrates me a lot hearing how dismissive other people in the field are being to you, just because you're like probably one of the first of your kind in youth activism. So when you were at work and then doing all of this like on the boots on the ground type of activism, and then you go back to school and then you see, like, you look around in your classroom. I'm assuming that there might be some discrepancy between what school teaches you and what you actually see while you're doing your work. So since education is so powerful for change, I mean, you've already spoken at middle schools and high schools and universities. If you had the opportunity to fundamentally redesign how we teach sustainability in schools, what would you do?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And one of the core aspects of my team's work is education for sustainable development. And we start that right from childhood, like from kindergarten onwards, and through both formal and non-formal education. And what we see is that the importance of integrating sustainability into every single subject. So it's not like sustainability is a completely separate subject that you learn when you're like much older, like perhaps one subject in high school and then one subject in university, and then you have literally no idea what goes on and how you can use your experience to be to do some kind of change. So that is what I would definitely say. I think that ensuring sustainability is integrated into every single subject as a core skill in schools is critically important. We do that. Like, so for instance, in Toronto, we're official environmental education partners with the Toronto District School Board. We work with school boards from UA to Suriname to we have our own school as well in rural Bangladesh. So we work with schools and universities all across the world to make sure that they have the ability to be able to integrate sustainability as a core competency. One example I'll give of someone not having that, and how important it is. One of our members, he was really active. He was about 16 or 17, and then his mom one day called us and said that I don't want him to be involved anymore because he's going to be a doctor, and I don't see what doing the work that you're doing with traveling to different countries or even the communities and helping them, or planting mangroves and trees, like what that has to do with being a doctor. And I was like, that is such a strange thing to say, because if you're going into the field of medicine, your first thing the oath that you take is to do no harm. It's to help people. And with that, if you're going to, for example, veterinary medicine, help other creatures. So it's really strange that someone would say something like that. But then I realized that it's because there's this huge gap between what is taught at school and the reality on the ground. So when I sat down and explained to her the importance of her son taking those actions, because as a doctor, he would need to help other people who are suffering from diseases. And sometimes those diseases came about as a result of water insecurity, food insecurity, not having access to resources, the tremendous health inequity that exists, even like the increase in zoonotic diseases as a result of climate change. And that's affecting not just animals and plants, but human beings as well. And so every action that he undertook, that empathy is needed in a doctor. So and that's an example I always share, because it's important that shows the importance of having sustainability in your education. Even when I was doing my MBA at Cornell, I was the youngest in my class, and I was very passionate about sustainability. And honestly, I looked around at some of my peers, and it was like looking at robots. It was like they could not understand why every action or every decision I made thought about people and planet. And I couldn't understand why every action or decision they made was only about the money. Because they were like, oh yeah, well, if you make money, it doesn't really matter if it affects the planet or if it affects other people. So money is important. And so I was like, yeah, but also people and planet, because you can't really make money in a world that is destroyed or in a society that is falling apart. So yeah, I think those two examples I'd say is emphasizes the importance of sustainability integrated into schools.
integrating sustainability into schools. I love that because right now, just like the story that you shared about the young man that was trying to become a doctor, I think that right now what's more pervasive in society right now, besides right now in society, we all, everyone right now at least knows that sustainability is a large issue that we should care about. But at the same time, when people think about going into work, it's always a pipeline of go to school, get degree, work, get money. And there's no thinking about the planet step in between there. So we need to completely rewire how we think about sustainability, since it's not going to be an afterthought after you get all your work done. It should be part of your work.
Absolutely. That there's one quote that I always comes to mind. David Orr had said, all education is environmental education. Honestly, going beyond that, every aspect of education is sustainability education, because every single skill that we have can be used for good. I was fortunate enough to see it in my parents, because my mom is a political scientist, my dad is a mechanical engineer, and both of them, with completely different fields of study, had this empathy for people and planet, that every action that they undertook was they thought about how would it affect other people, how would it affect the planet. And I think that no matter what career path you go into, it's so important to see how that benefits society and how that benefits the planet. If you don't teach that from a young age, and then you kind of just expect people to think about sustainability when they're older, that's not going to work. There's a huge gap that exists. So integrating that, whether you go into law or engineering or sociology or medicine, no matter which field you go into, if you think you have that thing that, okay, yeah, I'm going to think about people and I'm going to think about the planet, you're going to see a much more progressive society. And you're going to see much more progressive leaders as well, because if we're all educated, we elect people into office that are also educated in a similar way, and then take actions within that sphere to then drive change at the ground. So yeah, it's really very, very interconnected, and it all starts with that simple integration of sustainability as a core competency everywhere, not something that is completely separate.
That's so true, because people often just limit themselves thinking, it's too complicated, I can only focus on one thing at a time. And then they just keep moving a field along in a bad direction. But with so many interconnected issues, prioritizing can still be tough. So based on your work, what do you see as a single or maybe the top 3 most urgent climate justice issues we must absolutely address within the next 5 years?
Honestly, it's climate change and all of these other existential threats, they have similar impacts around the world, but they also create very localized, unique challenges. I think that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. There's no one single thing that every single person can do. The one single thing is probably educating ourselves and then going out there and acting. That's the constant. But every single country, region, community has different localized challenges. And I think taking that first step to identify those challenges and seeing how best you can leverage your resources, however minimal they might be, and trying to make sure that you are able to create even the smallest amount of change, I think that is really, really important. And I think that, since climate change is such an intersectional, wicked problem, again, you can't, it's not a tame issue like CFCs, for instance, that, okay, by passing off one big policy and one, governments making sure that they had policies that limited the use of CFCs, it's done. But with climate change, it impacts water, it impacts food, safety, education, infrastructure, literally every single aspect of life. So yeah, there's no one single solution. The only constant is identifying what the problem is and going out there and acting. And we might think that we know every single thing there is to know about sustainability at this point, but a lot of people still see it as something really abstract. Looking at all of the different intersections that exist at the ground level is really important to make sure it becomes then a concrete issue, and then implementing concrete solutions. So that would be my advice after working in so many different parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has like a specific spot or a place in the entire climate justice issue. So they just need to find their own place and just make some change where they can.
Yes, exactly. It's, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier with, big, seeing how people are doing, okay, but there's a really big thing, I need to do that. No, I like starting small and, creating change there, like meaningful change there is much better than trying to do something big because you think that is what the way forward is, and then not really creating any change at all. So it's not about that. It's about through those small actions, creating change.
When progress feels really, really slow, or when you see setbacks happen, what's a key habit, mindset, or source of motivation that helps you persevere and keep moving forward?
That's such a great question because, the change is slow. I think when people come into this field, and as young people, especially when we come into this field, we often say that, oh, okay, we're going to create change right away and you're going to see that change happen right away. But that's not true. And if you're especially dealing with a wicked problem like climate change, some of the changes and the positive impacts we're trying to make, we're probably not even going to see it within our lifetime, but it doesn't mean that it's any less important to do that work. And so I see the work that I do as planting and tending to and growing an oak tree. So I plant the seed of change. I'm going to ensure that there's water and sunlight and adequate space for it to grow, but it's not going to become a big oak tree the next day, right? It's going to take a lot of time to grow and to become this big oak tree. But that's okay because slowly and steadily we are making that change happen. And that is literally how I've worked and my team works all across the world, that the change that we are trying to bring about can be very, very slow, but we are creating change. If you're dealing with something like changing mindsets, you can't just go into community and be like, okay, today we are going to do this and we are going to pursue, for example, in some of the communities that we work in, it's like a lot of the women and girls weren't allowed to pursue careers or to get an education. And they were like, we're going to teach girls how to code. No, that's not going to get the community to agree to that because, well, it's something that is completely out of their sphere of knowledge because they're like, oh, no, absolutely not. However, we were able to engage this community with sewing skills because that was something that was seen as okay, that's something they're okay with women doing. And so that was the first step. That was meeting them where they were at. And so now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a school in rural Bangladesh. It's called the GreenHope Foundation Academy of Hope for Women and Girls. It's solar powered, and we have stitching and sewing classes in our Academy of Hope with women and girls who had been married off at 13, 14, and now in their early 20s have 2 to 3 children of their own. And they are women and girls who must not be left behind. With those skills, we are slowly, over the last few years, we have ensured that they have a stable source of income with something that they're doing themselves. It's their source of income. And so that was change that was created over the last many, many years. It definitely did not, we did not create this change right away. And most recently, we had our first batch of graduates from our sewing school. So I feel like that happened because we kept at it. If the community had said no right at the beginning and we were like, oh, okay, goodbye, then no. But we saw that, another group of people saying that, oh yeah, let's just do coding, and then be like, nope. And they were like, oh, sorry, we can't create change. This is hopeless. No, that's not the case. It's about meeting them where they're at and slowly and steadily creating that change. So now we are seeing the positive impacts, and there's a really long way to go, but we've sowed those seeds of change, and slowly and steadily the tree is now growing. So yeah, that is the mindset that I always have.
Just top tier analogy right here, planting a seed and waiting for it to grow, or actually taking several steps over a long period of time for it to grow. Like, I play an instrument on my own as well, and there's going to be maybe weeks where progress doesn't actually feel like progress. If progress doesn't feel like progress for an individual learning to do an instrument, why should it be any different when it's a group of people or a whole city of people, a whole country of people all trying to make something happen?
Absolutely. What instrument do you play?
I play the harp.
Nice. I trained in piano, like classically, and then my dad taught me guitar, and then I picked up the drums. I completely understand what you're saying because, yeah, I remember my piano teacher, like, I would always want to play the really fast pieces, and she would be like, no, go slow. Like, you need to learn how to do it properly before you start playing the really fast pieces that you want to play. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, why is this? Like, why do I have to do this? But yeah, I mean, it worked. And I think your analogy of like learning an instrument, like, you get how like tedious it can be to, practice and practice and practice, but then it pays off at the end. And so slowly and steadily you drive progress. So yeah, no. And that's also very cool that you play the harp.
Thank you. I mean, from one musician to another, it's just, we understand the slow progress turns into quick progress as at like a whole deeper level.
Just emphasizing the importance of recognizing young people as change makers, as agents of change, and that age has nothing to do with capability. So, and always keeping that in mind and in your heart, and that as young people, we have so much power to drive change.
Yeah, so Ms. Basu, your insights and your journey are truly inspiring. Thank you for sharing your time and wisdom with us today, and we've got no doubt you've ignited a spark in many more young people watching. And to everyone listening, if you're a student, educator, or community member inspired by this conversation, please go check out the GreenHope Foundation. We'll have links in the description and on our website. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more conversations about how youth are reshaping our planet. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye!